Brothers, good evening. Our big dinner will begin momentarily.
That Frank Norris, such a funny guy. Ah. It's my phone. Rob Caudill calling me? I wonder what Rob's calling about. Hey, Rob? Hey, yeah, how are you? Hey, I connected to the Zoom an hour early, like you said. Yeah, I'm on it right now. What, 8 o'clock? Right now? What? Oh, what do I do? Oh, brothers, welcome to 2020's premiere event. That is the fraternity's first ever virtual pig dinner. That's right, brothers. We're meeting for the first time in a virtual pig dinner because if you can't get to the pig dinner is coming to you. Brothers, we've also been celebrating our Founders Day today, May 1st, 1848, when Phi Gamma Delta began. And for that matter, we've also been using this opportunity to have a day of brotherhood. What an opportunity for us. I hope you've enjoyed the different events, seminars, sessions, recordings, and other things we've had a chance to share. And speaking of that, tonight, we asked you during the course of today to reach out to brothers as part of the 5 for Phi Gam challenge. And we asked you to reach out to 5 of your brothers in the hopes of touching 1,000 brothers across the country and stimulating that, well, friendship, that value that we so appreciate in the fraternity, being the sweetest influence as it is. So in rekindling that friendship, our goal of reaching 1,000 brothers, we also were unlocking a gift to the Phi Gamma Delta Educational Foundations. That $3,500 gift will support grants and scholarships for our undergraduate brothers. But of course, we want to see how we really did. On your phone, we'd like you to text the word Phi Gam, all one word, to 20123. That's Phi Gam, all one word, to 20123. When you get a response, enter your name and the number of brothers you contacted. We'll give you the results later during our dinner. Again, text Phi Gam, all one word, to 20123. When you get a response, enter your name and the number of brothers you contacted. And again, we'll give you a response later on about how we did with that. This evening, we'll do pretty much what we do at most pig dinners. We will sing the national anthems, we'll bring in the pig, we'll kiss it, we'll have the Exile's toast, the doxology, some recognitions, and a couple of speakers of well-noted people that some of you may know, love, and care to hear again and again. The only thing we're not supplying, of course, is the food, and of course, there's no cash bar. You'll have to supply those for yourselves. Now, by the way, if you are interested in helping support that $3,500 gift, you can go to phigam.org/brotherhood, where all of our Brotherhood Day events are emanating from. And you'll see that we have raised over $50,000 today for the Phi Gamma Delta Educational Foundations. Congratulations, brothers, and thank you for those who have given. Remember that you can still give until midnight tonight in order to help contribute to that goal of supporting brothers with scholarships, grants, leadership development, and the great, wonderful other things that the fraternities foundations do. And now, brothers, please stand at home and sing with us the national anthems of our nations, starting with Canada.
Canada, our home and ancient native land. Sun's coming, With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. Far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand.
And now, brothers, let's try to sing the national anthem of the United States of America.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed. The rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still. Say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Well, brothers, I did mention it is our first virtual pig dinner. Can you tell? So it is now time, having honored our two nations, we shall honor tradition and welcome this evening's illustrious and featured guest, the pig. In January, at our annual Fiji Academy in St. Louis, Missouri, we celebrated a pig dinner, and you're about to see footage from that event. Bringing in the pig will be brothers of our newest chapter, the Beta Kappa chapter at the University of Colorado, which returned last year. And doing my best Rob Riggle imitation here as a sports commentator, realizing that all of you have been missing sports commentary here, let me do my best and tell you that, let's see, Beta Kappa is now bringing the kid around the pig around the corner. They're on the straightaway. Here comes the crowd singing their way to victory.
Bringing in the pig, bringing in the pig. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the pig, bringing in the pig, bringing in the pig. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the pig, bringing in the pig, bringing in the pig. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the pig. Bringing in the pig, bringing in
They're reaching the
pig.
table.
We shall come
Here they go.
rejoicing, bringing in the pig.
And the pig is on the table. The brothers of Beta Kappa win one for the ages, having done so with possibly the most unappetizing looking pig ever known in pig dinner history. One for the books. Brothers, for our next athletic endeavor, someone must greet the pig properly. As the old carol goes, all hail, hail the Fiji feast. The Fiji pig is a bonny beast. From the north to the south, from east to west, or from west to east, we bow to Zeus, the Fiji feast. Brothers, let us do honors. Bill, you told me, are you ready? Brothers, let's do the honors. On the video, you saw former Archon President Bill Miller, Indiana 1962, kissing the face of the pig, and that spirited young brother approaching from the other direction was from our William Woods chapter, class of 2023. His name is Josh Hooper. Congratulations to Josh and to Bill for doing the honors a second time as the oldest and youngest of Fiji's present. The originator of the pig dinner and its namesake, of course, is Frank Norris, University of California at Berkeley, 1894. Norris was a noted novelist at the turn of the century, and if you've not read McTeague, The Octopus, Moran of the Lady Letty, or any of his other works, well, there is something you can do while you're in quarantine. We're going to hear another work from Frank Norris. So top off those drinks. It's time for a toast. From Henderson, in Nevada, where he is sheltering in mortal terror from the mayor of Las Vegas, I introduce former Archon counselor Jeff Downey, UCLA 1983, to deliver an Exile's toast.
Good evening, brothers. I hope you can hear me all right, and that you can see I'm joining you from the terrace of the Delta Xi chapter at Cal Berkeley in the background. So I thought that was fitting to include in tonight's toast. I'd like to, especially because this crowd is a little bit broader than typically when I do a toast. And so I thought it'd be fun to just share a few toast notes and get you up to speed, because some of your chapters don't do the toast every year. Some of you do the toast every year, and some of you do unique versions of the toast every year. So first of all, this will be the 120th anniversary of the toast in November, because it was written in November 1900 when Frank was in Roselle, New Jersey, and he was serving as a war correspondent for Major magazine at the time. And he was unable to make the pig dinner, so he wrote this endearing and interesting poem in response. Truthfully, it's all about friendships. A lot of the toast mentions his chapter brothers at Delta Xi Berkeley. From a historical perspective, the Spanish-American War was going on at that time, and one of his chapter brothers, Captain Selfridge, was one of the leaders of the Battle of San Juan Hill, one of the most major battles of the war, which is also mentioned in the toast. Some things I thought would be important to share are terms and places. So one of the ones that comes up a lot is the Poodle Dog restaurant, Der Poodle, which was a famous long-term restaurant in San Francisco for about 125 years at Bush and Grant. And Luntz Hall is mentioned in the toast. At the time, that was a place where the brothers liked to take the ladies to go dancing. And the dance that was very popular at the turn of the century was called Sherman's. Sherman's was not a tank or a general, but a dance. The other thing mentioned in the toast is the big game. The big game that we're referring to in this toast is between Cal and Stanford, which has been going on 125 years plus. Another term you don't hear too often anymore that's mentioned in the toast is sewing circle. A sewing circle was, back in the day, a ladies' gossip circle. So they would get together, knit or sew, and then they would talk about things. And then finally, probably the most important is the big question: why the German accent? So back in the turn of the century, there was a lot of German immigration to the United States. So maybe this was Frank's way of digging a little bit at the funny German accents. But another piece of history might say that Katzenjammer Kids, which was a cartoon syndicated starting in 1897 about two rambunctious cousins named Hans and Fritz, they and their antics, some people think Frank was reminded of his chapter brother's antics because of the Katzenjammer Kids, and it was done in a German accent. So those are a couple of reasons why we might have the German accent. Without any further ado, here's my rendition of an Exile's toast. From Roselle, New Jersey, November 1900, it starts. To the committee. Gesundheit, auch mein lieber friends. That note she comes today. You're dining by der Pudel in the same old jolly bay, while me ask Gott. Du lieber Gott. I've set me down and wept at your kind invitationing I cannot yet accept. Der Pudel. Don't I know their place? They blind mine eyes up tight and stands me by the plaza on. I find the house all right. Der Glasbär I've gebrochen there. Der Spoons I have gestohlen. Der Whisky Jimmy White have drunk. From auf der Sugar Bowl. Ach, those for days. Der Gibbs, he knows. And Mare, she knows it too. And Houghton can remember just a little thing or two. And that boy, Honey Houghton, he's a little puto my. He never sets his schooner down until he's drunk or dry. And also volley every bit, who always knows it all. Und Gibbons love for Furman, he leads Sherman's at Man's Hall. Und then, ach, hoch der Vaterland, there is the soldier man, the terror of the Spaniards in the March of San Juan. Der awful Captain Sailfridge, he's a howling martinet. When speaking to him, touch their cap, he loves the etiquette. Und Brooksy Balmer, he comes to that quiet little boy that calls him, and he's very good. Der Sobing circles joy. Und Humphreys, he's the sly one, for he knows the history of every Fiji chapter in the land from Z to Z. Und Billy Schmidt und Emery, they does their little stunts for Luton, the younger set, each Saturday at Ludd's. Hi, all you grads, you lucky grads who this Thanksgiving Day can stop at home. Just think of us, the exiles far away. There's Chunky in Geneva and there's Corbett in Paris and Doodle's gone to New Orleans and in New York there's me. And Houston's in St. Louis and there's Heathers. God knows where. We sits and waits and watches and we groans and tears out their hair. We workins out the differences in their time and everyone says out loud. They have kicked off. Their game have just begun. And we ain't there to see it played. And we ain't there to yell, and we ain't there to see their team just knock them into hell. Well, when you all sits down again to eat that poodle lunch, you all just try to fancy that permit you in the bunch. Here's to their team. By God, stand up. This ain't no usual drink. Stand up, hands round. Between us all, it is their common link. Stand up. It is the exiles' toast permit you all today. They're back again in their old place, and back again to stay. Stand up, from east and west, we come to be with you. We're dining at their poodle, just as once we used to do. This day, we show our colors, and let all their eagles scream, for we are dining at their poodle und verdrinking to their team. Fraternally, Frank Norris. Cheers, brothers.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't always drink water. When I do, I prefer Fiji water. Stay thirsty, brothers. It's now my pleasure to introduce Executive Director Emeritus Bill Martin, Mississippi State, 1975, to lead us in the doxology.
Bless
Heaven grant thy peace, lead on to victory, her strength increase. Long may our
to reign
in unity,
oh
O Lord, and
and save our dear fraternity.
Thank you, Bill, for coming back and doing the one thing your successor is just not able to do.
I'm sure he'd be just fine at it.
I'll challenge that notion.
Brothers, it's traditional during a big dinner to hear from some exiles in the form of messages and letters for those who are not able to return back to their chapter home base or the base of a nearby chapter holding a pig dinner, be it graduate or undergraduate. We're honored tonight with a message from a famous Phi Gam, journalist Major Garrett, Missouri, 1984. He's Washington News chief for CBS and has a long journalistic experience, including having served as chief correspondent from the White House. He's an active member of our Washington, D.C. graduate chapter and has a special message for us.
Hello, fellow Fiji brothers. Happy Founders Day. 172 years and we're looking as good as ever. A couple of things we can just concede up front. Not everyone in the house when you were there was your ultimate best friend or became your ultimate best friend. Doesn't need to be. The three of the most important friends I ever made in my life, Phi Gams. Sustained me, improved me, made me a better person, with me to this day, among my most cherished friendships in life and from college. That's what this does. That's what our house does. That's what our fraternity does. Got a couple things I do. In addition to CBS stuff, I do a podcast called The Takeout, Cal Ripken Jr. this week. Also something called Debriefing the Briefing in this whole coronavirus adaptation period of time. Jared Polis, Democratic Governor of Colorado, my guest this week. He's Phi Gam too. Take a listen. Be well. See you.
Brothers, Major Garrett, CBS News. So now I'd like to recognize some brothers who, some of them are on the broadcast this evening and may or may not know what's coming up. It's traditional at pig dinners to recognize brothers who were initiated 25, 50, or even 75 years ago. The fraternity presents certificates called Silver, Golden, and Diamond Owls to those brothers. You'll often see the Diamond Owls in particular recognized in the fraternity's magazine. But today, this day in 1970, 2 chapters initiated their pledge classes, all members of the class of 1973, and by coincidence, or maybe by no coincidence at all, these 2 chapters are perennial combatants for the Cheney Cup and other fraternity awards. You haven't guessed already? They are Kappa Deuteron at the University of Georgia and Sigma Tau chapter at the University of Washington. The names of those brothers I'll now read, starting with the University of Washington. They are Harold Anderson, Donald Boyd, John Flower, Paul Franklin III, Mark Freiberg, Otto Klein, Michael Kondo, Ted Legride, Stephen Lamons, William Mitchell, MD, Gary Olson, Raymond Paxton, Daniel Panovich, Greg Schaefer, Stephen Schulte, Thomas Schwartz, Patrick Spink, Kevin Weedman, Preston Winters, and Dwayne Woods. And now from the University of Georgia, James Altenbach, Mark Bodenheim, James Callison, Larry Jordan, Stuart McGarrity, James McKenzie, Michael Nellis, Gerald Pierce, Thomas Rogers, Richard Humans, a brother that I heard from earlier today, my friend, Dr. Samuel W. Richwine Jr., a great Phi Gam, as all of these brothers are. We congratulate them on 50 years tonight as a Phi Gamma Delta. Let's give them a hand. Now, while I've been speaking, before I get into that, I should mention we were doing some results earlier, texting or asking you to text in to your response about the contacting brothers for the Day of Friendship, the day or Day of Brotherhood, and you were supposed to text Phi Gam, all one word, to 20123. We're interested in getting your responses back from that. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, go ahead and text Phi Gam, all one word, to 20123, just as you see on the screen. And when you get a response back, add your name and the number of brothers that you have called or contacted, and we'll see what the results are here at the end of our program. Now, we've also received some questions online in our chat through these different ways that we're broadcasting tonight about the owl that I have over here. And some of you have said, this is not Gamma, what's he doing here, what's going on? All right, so he's not a snowy white owl, so shoot me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, that's so insensitive of me. I'm sorry. It's too soon, isn't it? Well, anyway, brothers, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Executive Director Rob Caudill, Akron 2004. He's going to present to us an update on the fraternity's condition in these challenging times.
Thank you, Towner. Brothers, good evening, and appreciate everyone joining us tonight. A different venue, but you can still feel that Phi Gam spirit from here. Before I begin in my brief remarks, I just want to make a couple of acknowledgments and additional thank yous. First of all, a big thank you to the Phi Gam Educational Foundation. In case you brothers are not aware, it's really the foundation which organized this Day of Brotherhood and made this whole day possible for us. So on behalf of Phi Gams everywhere, thank you, brothers. And a special shout out, many of you know a brother on the staff, Duke Murphy, Coastal Carolina graduate and a longtime staff member. It's really Duke's efforts that made this possible. So Duke, we want to give you a special acknowledgement and recognition for making this possible for all of us today. So I want to also say thank you to all the various brothers and the staff members who also made today possible. It took a lot of work and a lot of quick work to make it possible. So we had brothers leading various sessions throughout the day, staff members leading sessions. We certainly appreciated that. But above all, again, thank you to those who've been with us all day today. We appreciate it. It's great to see that Phi Gam spirit, and it's great to know that the Phi Gamma Deltas care about one another. So the question above all questions is, how is Phi Gamma Delta doing today? Well, let me start off with some baseline information, some numbers. As we stand, we are represented on 155 campuses. That's undergraduate chapters and colonies, and we have 51 strong graduate chapters. Some more numbers: 11,000 undergraduate members, 126,400 living graduate members, and as of at least yesterday, 198,111 brothers initiated into Phi Gamma Delta in our first 172 years. Also an important number just to point out, amongst all that, 2,118 brothers who serve in a volunteer capacity, an unpaid capacity, and give a labor of love to Phi Gamma Delta. So how are we doing? What are the things that we've been seeing? Well, some more numbers. Our chapters overall, 63% above the all men's average, a cumulative 3.095 grade point average for our fraternity undergraduate men. Very strong. 140,000 hours of community service and more than $1.5 million donated for philanthropic causes last year. That's last year, and only with 60% of chapters reporting. So we know we're doing significantly better than that even. And pertinent to this crowd especially, nearly 6,000 brothers have contributed financially to the fraternity this year alone. 6,000 brothers giving their treasure to support the organizations they love. We appreciate that, brothers. It's no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has had significant impacts on all of us. It's affected everyone's life. There's no dodging it. And before we think about how it's impacted the fraternity, I want to pause for a minute and just have us all think about those who have been most significantly impacted, particularly our brothers who have been personally impacted in terms of their own health, perhaps their families, perhaps their jobs. So brothers, know that we are thinking of you, and we're all here to support you during this difficult time. It has been difficult for the fraternity as a whole. our chapters have all been impacted. No one has been spared. As we escalated through the spring and very, very quickly, in a matter of about 2 weeks, every single one of our host institutions had essentially closed their campuses. It rolled a little bit where classes first went remote and they weren't sure how long, but ultimately every campus started holding virtual instruction, and most of them started moving their students from campus. So while campuses were closed, it's important to note that that does not mean that our chapters were closed, because very quickly they made adjustments, and I'm very proud of it. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. As we think about the different ways that we've all had to respond, we've had to make quick pivots. We've had to make quick decisions, not necessarily based on a lot of information. And we hope that we're doing the best we can to support everyone out there. So like many, the headquarters staff is working remote. We were forced to shut down the headquarters building, and we're all forced to work from our homes, like you see here. But we were able to quickly adjust, quickly maintain significant contact with our chapters. For example, field studies who are used to visiting chapters on campus could no longer do that. So they were using mechanisms just like this to stay in constant contact with our chapter officers and our graduate volunteers, offering as much support as we possibly could to help them continue throughout the spring semester. It resulted in a lot greater increase in our communications. You saw that through a lot of virtual platforms, certainly more of these Zoom calls, but a lot of town halls, virtual education. We find ways to continue to get that message across. I did say, and I want to come back to and point out that I am very, very proud of all of our brothers, and particularly our undergraduate chapters, our undergraduate brothers, and those volunteers who support those chapters. First and foremost, what we adopted as a staff was a mantra of help them stay connected, check in frequently, and our brothers did that. Our brothers quickly adopted Zoom platforms, Google Hangouts, you name it, to make sure that they were touching base with one another on a regular basis, to make sure that everyone was okay. And that's the thing that was most important. Some chapters started to really shift and pretty quickly shift their philanthropies. So just a couple to point out, and if I'm not meaning to miss you, but I don't have time to read off everybody, but just a couple examples. Our University of Kentucky chapter quickly shifted their Out of the Darkness walk to hold it virtually in their own neighborhoods around town, raising significant dollars for that cause. Our Embry-Riddle chapter converted a Relay for Life in a matter of 5 days to a social media Relay for Life. Loyola New Orleans, a brand new colony, offered a t-shirt fundraiser to help a COVID-19 disaster relief fund. Just a couple of examples. The Phi Gams spirit continues in a lot of ways, and continued throughout the spring in a lot of ways. Like all of us, we couldn't go to a pig dinner, and many of you could not go to your chapter's pig dinners that were planned for this spring. A lot of those were postponed. Unfortunately, some canceled. Others got a little bit more creative. We'll give due credit to a lot of our chapters out there who started this before we did tonight, but a few to point out, and some chapters that had their own virtual pig dinners with great success. Certainly our Phi Sigma chapter at Florida State, our Rho Alpha chapter at Virginia Tech, and our Houston graduate chapter, all with very successful pig dinners in these last couple of weeks. It's great to see those efforts. And our chapters are continuing in a lot of other ways. A lot of other ways I'm not going to get into, but I will point out one of the big questions is, how can we possibly continue one of those vital elements of fraternity, and that's recruiting? We're already finding ways. I'll point out a couple of anecdotals. I know a few chapters, particularly in the greater Midwest, at Kansas State and at Missouri, for example. They've already talked about and told us about the men that they started to recruit for the fall without being able to make contact with them in person as they usually would. Those are the kinds of adjustments we're going to have to continue to make. So the big question is, what about the fall? What are we expecting? We don't know. I would tell you, brothers, that if I knew exactly what was going to happen, I would imagine I would be in great demand right now. We don't know for sure. I think we are expecting a variety of scenarios, and I don't expect any two campuses to respond in the exact same way. I was talking with one of our staff members earlier today, and I think we've narrowed it down to probably 4 or 5 different buckets of responses. And that's going to range everything from operating pretty much as normal, which I think will be the rare exception, to some sort of hybrid model where students are on campus, but maybe have some virtual classes or gatherings are limited. And there could be some campuses where students are still not allowed to be on campus, where they're still holding classes completely virtually. And it's going to be a challenge. But we're working on all those scenarios. The staff is preparing to respond to all those scenarios in order to best support our chapters. And we're going to start very soon working with all of our undergraduate leaders, all of our graduate volunteers, to prepare plans for whatever scenario your campus may fall into the fall, so that you can be best prepared and have a successful semester. We should be aware that support may look different. Support may look different. You may not have a traditional field study visit in those first couple weeks of school, or in the fall, or in the spring. But you can guarantee that you will have headquarters staff support. You can guarantee that staff members will be working with your chapters, coaching with your chapters to help you be successful. I think we also need to be prepared to know that volunteer support may not look the same. We have some brothers who are dedicated, but for their own reasons just may not be in a position where it's wise for them to be available in their usual ways or present as they normally are. We'll adjust, we'll adapt, we'll persist. Whatever the situation, our chapters can and will survive, and they'll thrive. Flexibility and adaptation will be the key to this. The international fraternity will survive and offer support to undergraduate volunteers. Just a moment, because I haven't spoken on it, we know that there is significant economic impact to everybody in this pandemic. Fortunately, through years of fiscal responsibility and great discipline, the international fraternity is well positioned to weather this storm. Certainly, we're good stewards of our resources. We will tighten down. We'll make adjustments of our own to ensure we can continue our operation, but we're not in a position where we have to significantly make cuts and cut the support that is available to our undergraduate chapters and our graduate brothers. But I have to say and make a plug here as I look at the screen. We rely on our graduate brothers to help us in that effort and to help take that burden off of our undergraduates during a very difficult time. So again, I applaud and appreciate the brothers who have given today to raise thus far $55,507 on today's day of Brotherhood. I encourage you to consider if you can do more, and when asked, if you can step forward to help keep our fraternity going very strongly. Now, as we think about where we are today, it's important to always think about where we've been. You don't make it 172 years without going through a few issues. We've endured wars, we've endured pandemics, other epidemics. We've had our struggles, we've had our ups and downs, but we've made through it. We've adjusted, we survived, and at the end, we thrive. Let me give you just one example, and there are many, many more as you dig into our history. In World War I, for example, 50% of our undergraduate population enlisted. In a year's time, undergraduate membership was down by 60%. Our average chapter size at that time was 20 men before the start of the war. Within a year's time, dropped to 13 men. Several chapters were forced to temporarily close. Several chapters were forced to adjust their living situation. Even the fraternity's only staff member at that time, a single field study, was drafted. A lot of our operation was threatened. How did we respond? There are a couple key pieces to keep in mind. It was during this time that Archon President Orion Cheney enlisted the Purple Legion, where he called upon graduate brothers to come forward and offer support to our undergraduate chapters. This, of course, was a precursor to our position today of the Purple Legionnaire. The fraternity also organized what they called National Rushing Week, where graduates identified potential men coming onto campus to assist our chapters in recruitment. That sound familiar? With the loss of our lone staff member, our one field secretary, section chiefs mobilized and stepped in to play a much larger role to support our undergraduate chapters. And of course, the fraternity took reasonable steps, needed steps, to control expenses and secure our assets. This is just one of many examples, brothers. And the takeaway message I have for you is that the spirit of Phi Gamma Delta will continue and find a way to thrive. I have no doubt that we will evolve, and we will likely see some changes in the coming months and years, but we will come out of this stronger than we've ever been. The foundation of everything that we do is based on our brotherhood. The spirit of brotherhood that we've exhibited today through our day of brotherhood and those friendships those friendships which are the foundation for everything that we do at Phi Gamma Delta. Brothers, again, thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to be celebrating 172 years of Phi Gamma Delta with you. Press on, brothers.
Rob, thank you very much for your comments, and thank you too for your leadership and the leadership of the entire staff as we work through this difficult time. Brothers, I'm now honored to introduce to you a man that perhaps needs no introduction because he is our Archon president, Clark Robertson, brother from Nebraska, 1982. He's going to be discussing what will the future of Phi Gamma Delta look like. Clark?
Thank you, Towner. Hope everybody can hear me okay. I wanted to point out that behind my right shoulder is my own personal gamma. And on the opposite wall, which I'm not going to show you, is all of the Fiji paraphernalia that I've collected over the years. So this is my hideout that I spent a lot of time in my home here in Corpus Christi. So first of all, happy birthday, brothers, on 172 years of Phi Gamma Delta. I have to say this is one of the more unusual pig dinners I've been to, and I've been to a few. I was thinking about all the different ones today, and one that struck me that might be kind of entertaining for you is that back in 1983-84, I was a field secretary and was at Edmonton, Alberta for their pig dinner, and happened to be there when Archon counselor Bob Albin was there. And so we went to the dinner. Bob was sitting at the head table, and I was sitting at in the back of the room. So one of the traditions they have at Edmonton is bunning the head table. Now, I didn't really realize what bunning the head table meant until I started seeing these guys pepper the head table constantly through dinner with these really hardened dinner rolls. Now, Bob was up there dodging back and forth the rolls that were headed his direction. And I thought, you know what? If I ever tell this story at a pig dinner like I'm doing now, I will never tell it while there's still some dinner rolls sitting on the table. The beauty of this one is, of course, there's no rolls other than your comments that are chatting the up or down across the screen. So I try to also think about the Immortal Six, and they would be sitting in a log cabin 172 years ago, trying to socially distance themselves in a cabin which didn't lend itself to much social distancing, I can assure you. And I did wonder what it would be like at the Sweetwater River if John Templeton McCarty and Bolivar G. Krebs happened to have surgical masks on, and whether there would have been any incident whatsoever. But you know, I think it's a wonderful thing that we're doing here. I was on the conference or the chat with Zoom with the National Capital Fijis, who had a virtual happy hour. I was able to find myself a virtual drink to have with that virtual happy hour. And the spirit of Phi Gamma Delta is just wonderful to see. And it's wonderful to see these events crop up the way they have. You know, Rob gave you a pretty good update on things in the fraternity. And I'm going to really talk about just a couple of things while we've got a moment. You know, I know that right now, all of us are focused in on some of the short-term things that are right in front of us. You know, is our job safe? How are our parents doing? How do we keep ourselves and our family healthy? Will the stock market ever recover? Is my kids ever going to leave the house again? Will I be able to grab a drink at a bar sometime? Is Bill Martin still memorizing brothers' names? These are all very serious questions. But what I said earlier today when we were on the phone doing a Q&A with some of the foundation folks is we don't have to worry about Phi Gamma Delta. Why? Well, because Phi Gamma Delta is a set of principles and ideals. They're both timeless and not subject to a physical infection. Coronavirus can't enter a cell of our principles. It cannot wreak havoc on our respiratory system because our lifeblood is the relationship between us all. That will never be terminated. So as we are concerned with our undergraduate chapters, our house corporations, our headquarters operations as well, Obviously, those things need to be nurtured and cared for and protected as best we can. But ultimately, it's the collective spirit of Phi Gamma Delta that will carry us forward. And that light is not going to be dimmed or diminished by the coronavirus. It cannot be touched by this thing. So let me just talk, I think the most important thing I can give you in a very short way tonight is the thing that I think is most important and precious with us is the thread of Phi Gamma Delta. And I relate the thread of Phi Gamma Delta through a story. I don't know if you all watch College Game Day like I do, but every Saturday, I hope there's another College Game Day eventually. But there's always that segment with Tom Rinaldi, the tear-jerking segment that you're sitting there, you're waiting for your team's, analysis to show up. And then all of a sudden, Tom Rinaldi gets on there and he's got this tear-jerking, sad story that you just hope, is a good ending. And so that's the moment in my speech tonight that I just want to take you to. So Suzanne and I were in Jacksonville back in 2011. And I was driving to the neighborhood grocery store with my daughter, Lauren. And so we're driving out of the neighborhood. I see a Fiji flag off to my left hanging on a house. And I said, I'm going to have to stop back and see what that's all about. So we got to the grocery store. We picked up our things. We're standing in the checkout line. And this guy comes up to me. I, at that time, still do have a lot of Fiji hats. And this one was on backwards. And he comes up to me and says, "Hey, I love your hat." Well, that was my introduction to a guy named Tom Shoven. Tom had served as a section chief and was just a wonderful, wonderful Fiji and a wonderful person. And he said, "Hey, come on over to my house." Told him we lived in the same neighborhood. And at that point was my introduction to Tom Shovel and his wife, Lynn, and the friends from Ohio University, which is where he was a founding member. So fast forward, I lived about maybe no more than half a mile from Tom. And Tom, I didn't know at that time, had really been battling cancer for probably several decades. And this was, I think, his fourth round with it. And so we were scheduled to go back to Ohio University. Our chapter there had been closed. And we were going to go back and have a chartering. And in conjunction with that chartering, they were also having their 50th anniversary pig dinner, just like we are tonight. And so all of his contemporaries were going to come back, and I checked in with Tom just to see if he was going to try and make it back. And he wasn't doing well, but this was, you could tell, this was really important to him. And so he and his wife Lynn made it back for that chartering. And I don't have pictures here. I'd love to show them to you. I have certainly pictures with me and Tom, and I have pictures with Tom and all of his pledge brothers, and I have pictures with Tom and all of the entire old and young alike as at the chartering event. And Tom was in wonderful form. Spirits are up. I don't think I'd seen him happier, at least in the time that I had been around him. And he was always a pretty jovial guy. So unfortunately, Tom passed away about a month later. And I will say, I went to the funeral, and there must have been 40 of his chapter brothers that came down to Jacksonville to attend. And for me, what that meant, what that symbolized, was how important the fraternal experience is to all of us, and how important that thread of Phi Gamma Delta was to Tom, and all of us have our own unique thread, whether it's one that has been a great association like mine and like the one that Tom had with the fraternity, or whether it's a little bit more removed. We all have a great association with this that endures through our lives. That thread is seen and unseen. In my case, I didn't discover Phi Gamma Delta until I was getting ready to go down to college, and found out that my dad and my uncle were Fijis. That was my introduction to it. But for me, it's been the friendships over a lifetime, both from my own chapter and from everywhere in the country. Great experiences, some fun, some loads of laughter, some meaningful things, some painful. But in all cases, with a great love for the fraternity. And so I would just tell you, brothers, is this, as we get ready to conclude pretty soon, I just hope that you have the same strong thread of appreciation and love for the fraternity as I do, and that which Tom Shovelin had. Because I think if you have the experience like that, then it's a wonderful and enriching lifelong experience for us all. You know, we talk about, I was introduced to the concept of curveballs 40 years ago by Bill Martin, and we're in a curveball. As with all curveballs, sometimes they're expected, sometimes they're unexpected. Sometimes they're difficult, sometimes they're pretty easy. It's rare that you get a curveball that affects so many people at one time, like what we're in today. But like as Rob indicated, the fraternity will go on. This coronavirus can't infect Phi Gamma Delta. We are a set of wonderful principles and ideals, and we will go on and on and on. Brothers, I've enjoyed spending some time with you, enjoyed Towner's commentary, and I appreciate everything you all do for Phi Gamma Delta. We appreciate all the time, talent, and treasure that you provide our great fraternity, and mighty proud to be a Fiji.
Clark, thank you so much for both your comments and for your leadership and that of the Archons and helping guide Phi Gamma Delta, especially as we've entered such an uncertain time. And I want to say thank you too for all of the brothers who've attended this. Your love for Phi Gamma Delta shows through your participation in this event and the other activities of the fraternity, be it as a volunteer, a brother that's reaching out and contacting other brothers and celebrating that bond of friendship, those who are focused on service, or those who are focused on being the best they can be in other ways. Brothers, a couple of announcements before we finish our pig dinner. First off, I want to acknowledge that there has been a challenge gift issued during this pig dinner hour from 8 p.m., and we're already well into that hour, all the way till 10 p.m. It's a $5,000 challenge match that an anonymous donor has put up. And if you go to phigam.org/brotherhood, you can place a gift. And if we reach that $5,000, every dollar that's given will be matched during this virtual pig dinner donor match. So again, let's go to phigam.org/brotherhood and let's see if we can capture that matching gift of $5,000. And thank you to the brother and the many other brothers for that matter who have both given today and have also challenged us to give as well. It's very much appreciated. And remember that all of these proceeds are going towards supporting Phi Gamma Delta, especially through the Phi Gamma Delta Foundation of the United States and of Canada. So, brothers, remember that the program does continue, by the way, after this dinner. Starting at 9 o'clock, we have a gaming session through a Discord server. You can, again, go to that same link that I mentioned earlier, phigam.org/brotherhood, to participate in that. We also have a Netflix watching session. And those of you who are fans of some Phi Gam comedians, actually the second and third funniest Phi Gams in existence, that would be Seth Meyers and Jim Gaffigan. They've got a couple movies of theirs that they'll be showing on Netflix and that you can participate in the watch party. So very exciting stuff. Brothers, I also want to mention we had the text earlier, the 5 for Phi Gam challenge that we asked you to text in your name and the number of people that you contacted. We had Duke Murphy go through and try to add up all of the numbers, and he unfortunately lost count because there were just too many texts coming in, which is very exciting. It means that we've embraced the idea behind this day of brotherhood, which was to use our bonds of friendship, the sweetest influence, to rekindle our own sense of Phi Gamma Delta and our dedication to what friendship really means. As Clark alluded to, relationships matter. They matter to our mental health. They matter to our sanity. They matter to how we go out and can help others. It's through having these strong relationships. So thank you, brothers, for rekindling that. And for that matter, for reaching the 1,000 brothers contacted, which unlocked that $3,500 gift. Very exciting stuff, brothers. We appreciate that support so much. Brothers, if I may, because it is Founders Day, here as we close, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous. First, thank you to Frank Norris for being who he was and the man that we remember as a paragon of Phi Gamma Delta. I want to thank my own personal Gamma here for not hurting me when I insulted him earlier there. And also, I'd like to turn to the minutes of the Grand Chapter to close with. Because at this hour of 9 p.m., 172 years ago, The association convened according to the adjournment and was organized by calling J.T. McCarty to the chair. The committee appointed to draft a constitution then submitted their report, which was received and adopted. The members then respectively signed their names to the Constitution, and thus was established the Order of Phi Gamma Delta at Jefferson College, Pennsylvania, in the year Anno Domini 1848. An election for officers was then entered into, which resulted in the choice of S.B. Wilson, President, J.T. McCarty, Treasurer, and N. Fletcher, Secretary. On motion, the Secretary was ordered to purchase a small blank book for the purpose of transcribing the Constitution. On motion, a committee of one was appointed to draw up a report in relation to the establishment of foreign chapters. Committee, S.B. Wilson. On motion, the chapter adjourned to meet tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock. And so, brothers, we celebrate at this very hour 172 years of existence, of friendship, and commitment to serving others. Brothers, thank you again for joining us. Good night and good luck.
Happy Founders Day, brothers.